Hello, my name's Mate. You have connected in with the Inbetweeners podcast for our checkup. Today, I am fortunate enough to be talking to a very close friend of mine, Zane Blomfield. We have been, connected in a few different ways across the years, and we've sort of shared over that time, different experiences and stuff that we've dealt with in the past, and kind of offered little tips and tricks to each other in terms of how we can sort of deal with things going forwards. So what I'm going to do is hand it over to Zane, and he can offer a bit of introduction to himself. So I guess you guys at home can understand who he is, and then we can get into a bit of discussion about what he has to offer. Over to you, Zane.
Thanks, Mate. Yeah, so as Mate said, my name's Zane. I actually live in Orewa at the moment, and I live there with my wife, and we've got a blended family of 6 kids. And yeah, life's pretty busy, and on top of the current situation, there's certainly always challenges in life. And this is a new chapter, or a current chapter of my life. And with the current situation that we're dealing with COVID-19, all the different changes people are going through, I can certainly gain some memories from a previous part of my life where there was a similar financial situation that I was in, and the different stuff I dealt with. I was married previously in 2000, and we already had a 4-year-old daughter and got pregnant with twins. And 3 days after the twins were born, my wife at the time passed away unexpectedly, and it was a massive life-changing thing on so many different levels. We had just bought a property and were mortgaged at maximum. We had a small business we were running together, on top of having 3 children under 5. So the shift from being happily married with a view of that life's great, and two adults dealing with one child, to one adult dealing with 3 children, and the financial repercussions of that scenario was more than I could comprehend at the time. And I learned a lot from that experience, and I'm here at the other side of it to try and offer what I can to support other people in dealing with the mental and emotional as well as the physical side of what that may have created for you guys. Yeah.
Appreciate that, Zane. I mean, I guess for myself, I had our first child just a couple of years ago, and obviously I've got my wife there in support, and I must admit that that's been a challenge unto itself. But to compound that with all the other aspects, it really, I guess, when things first happened for you, I guess, how did you kind of respond? What was sort of the initial reaction to it all?
That's a good question, because if we look at the different reactions that people could be having in this situation, and I rewind back to that moment, in particular the moment where the doctors told me that she'd passed away, and it's very clear, like it was yesterday. I looked across the shoulder, I saw a window, it was 4 stories up. My first thought was throw myself out the window. I can't, the thought of trying to deal with even the next moment was beyond my capability, as it seemed. So my first thought was, I've got to go. I've got to somehow be with her, and that I couldn't imagine. Yeah, it's hard to describe. It was a sense of unreal, and yet like being hit with a large lump of wood. It's as close as I can explain it, to be honest.
Yeah. But obviously, with 3 young ones there, that probably were a large factor in you deciding to do otherwise.
Absolutely. Look, and if I put myself back in that place and look at the times where, if I was to be honest, there was a day didn't go by where I didn't have this belief that I could not make it through the day, let alone the next day and the next day. And I'd had dark thoughts on suicide and ending my life. And the thing that at that point, the first thing that really kept me going was looking at the kids and realizing that it was about more than me. It was about them. They'd already lost one parent, and to put that on them, to lose another parent, would be, a worse, uncomprehendable headspace than the one I was already dealing with.
Yeah. And I guess in terms of the family unit, were you able to kind of call on further people for support?
Yeah, so I definitely had support from my family, from Rachel's family. It was my wife who passed away. That was her name. And from friends. And they did everything they possibly could to support me. But there's a gap, and anybody who's been through a situation like this will understand, there's a gap where no other person can reach through, no other person can really, if you look at the three, I guess, fundamental sectors of being a human being, the physical, emotional, and spiritual, plenty of people could help with the physical side of it. Nobody could help with the emotional side other than words and gestures. And the spiritual side of it was completely blown out of the water. Every single thing I believed in was like thrown out the window, because the situation that happened to me didn't match what I believed would happen to a good person or whatever else. So yes, I got support, but there's a chunk of it no one else can take care of, really. Yeah.
So I guess, look, the immediate need is obviously to your children in terms of ensuring their basic needs are met. Did you have an opportunity, I guess, to take some time for yourself at that stage and kind of process, grieve, call it what you will, I guess, we'll call it deal with that stuff in some shape or form?
Yes and no. I did. My Rachel's mum, so she would come and take the kids every second weekend for a couple of days, and also had a group of people called Parent Aid who were assigned by the government, for lack of a better connection there, to come in one day a week for a couple of hours and help with basic stuff and just talking. And so I did have some time to go and do stuff, but to be honest, it was actually better. The times that I was consumed with looking after the kids got me through, because there was a need beyond my own that pulled me forwards when my own needs felt like they weren't getting met. Even though every second weekend I would go surfing or go to parties or socialize or whatever else, the sense of what happened was my view of myself and that change went from being someone that was normal, I guess, and fitted into the classic Kiwi bloke. I'm at work, wife's at home running the house, to all of a sudden being thrown into this world where, when I was brought up, it was like, this is not what a male does. A male does not raise kids. So I had this real sense of myself of being not normal, not fitting in, don't belong here, life's wrong. So even when I had the time, it was good to let go to do physical stuff like surfing and even mowing the lawns and having a sense of purpose outside of raising the kids. The twins were premature, so they were on a 3-hour feeding cycle, as well as needing a lot of attention really quickly in the beginning.
Yeah.
So yes, there was time off, but in some ways I dealt with it better when I didn't have the free headspace to start thinking about the situation. Yeah.
All right. And I guess when did you start to feel that the pressure came off a bit and you were in a position to maybe look at yourself and your own needs a bit more?
Two years ago, I don't know. It's like the weather, when was the sun out last? Well, the sun comes and goes. I don't want to be too cryptic about the answer, but initially when, let me think. It felt like it took a while. Like in my memory, it was probably 5 years before, like when the twins first started going to school, then there was like suddenly this change of schedule where I had some time. There were moments in between, and look, if it wasn't for one big factor that got me through was the people around me and the people being able to step in and go, come on, just give me the kids, go mow the lawns, just go out for a while and go do something, to feel normal. And the breaks that I did have and the support around me was a massive part of of getting opportunities to look after myself as well. And people telling me, look, if you're no good, they're no good. You got to look after yourself. Like really, the stand that other people had for me, even when I was, pretending it was all good, was a big factor.
Yeah. And I think the difficulty is, you're trying, especially for the kids, you're trying to hold it all together. You're trying to show that sort of strength and stability, whereas inside, I guess there's an internal battle, and whether or not you express that to the kids or to those around you, I think, like you've sort of indicated that people appreciated the situation you're in, and even if you didn't necessarily put your hand up, they were certainly more than willing to offer you help. I guess, at what point did you feel comfortable in kind of saying, hey, look, I'm not okay, can you give me a hand?
That was a big thing, because again, at the time, 2000, it wasn't quite when, we were still living a little bit from the way a man should be and the way a woman should be, and that old-fashioned mindset. And it was a very common thing for people to come and visit and walk in the door and say, how's it going? And my default thing was, oh yeah, it's pretty good, not too bad, not too bad, not too bad. You need any help? No, I'm fine. Because there was a part of me that thought, if I say I need help, that means I'm not dealing with it well, which to me felt like I was weak. And if I wasn't dealing with it, then what was going to happen? Could I get into trouble? Was I going to fall apart? So there was a real old-fashioned, stubborn male mindset that really took me a long time to put aside or give up, so that I could be honest. Like I felt like I would be weak if I said I'm really struggling. So it took a long time, and like people would come and they'd try and help, and then they'd leave because I'd be like, oh no, I'm good, I've got it, it's all good, sweet, thank you. They'd leave, and the moment they walked outside, it was like holding my breath. My heart would drop. I'd just feel this massive sadness come over me. I'd burst into tears and watch them drive down the road and think, why didn't I just ask for help? What the heck? What it took was a friend of mine who was very intuitive, and she came up one day with a piece of cardboard folded in half, and she said, when I leave, open it up and read it. And I opened it up, and what it said was, we know what you're going through, and we genuinely want to help. It's a gift to us if you allow us to help, so please let us help.
Yeah.
And she made me pin that up on the wall so that I could get over that old-fashioned headspace, because people knew.
Yeah.
I couldn't hide it really.
Yeah.
So it took, I don't know, around 6 months at least before I would even allow anybody to help, even though on the inside I was desperate. I was desperate for anything to help. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Well, I mean, I guess there's so many people out there that are going through struggles, whether or not it's based on the current situation or previous to that, who don't feel that they can reach out and ask for help, so you're by no means alone in that regard. And I think it seems to be a kind of commonality, especially from a male front, in terms of that masculinity, and whether part of that is being able to ask for help, because I mean, it's hindsight, because I certainly have kind of kept quiet in the past, but it's so much more courageous if we can actually say, hey, look, I'm not okay. Can you help me? And when you ask, the universe delivers, and it's great to see how people respond in those situations. But if they don't know your situation, or they assume that you're okay, then you're none the wiser, I guess.
Yeah, and I can certainly see when I look at my situation then and look out at the world with what people are dealing with on a normal day, let alone in a situation like a pandemic. And when we have this strange idea that there's something wrong with being really honest and authentic about what's actually going on, like it's weird or it's bad. And back then it was. I mean, I was a bogan at the time, basically working on old Holdens, surfing, going to parties, listening to rock music. So to be thrown from that to, I'm an emotional wreck trying to figure out how to understand how babies communicate before they can speak words as well as everything else. And, one of the moments that really was a changing point for me was, because I would cry a lot, but I would never tell anybody. And there was a day where I felt so down, and I burst into tears, and sitting at the chair with my head on the table, just a blubbering mess. And the girls came in, and my first thought was, oh, I better not let them see. And I thought, you know what? No. And it took a lot of strength to just let go and be able to cry. And they were looking at me and sort of, consoling me. And this is 19 years ago, and they still remember it. Remember that time you were crying, Dad? And I could tell by the way that they say that, and in that moment, they gained a huge amount of respect for me, because they learned that it was okay to actually be honest about what you're dealing with and how you feel. And also that took me from being some mythical superhuman person called a parent to, I'm just another human being, and I'm not perfect, and it's okay. It's okay that we're not perfect. It's part of being perfect, is to be okay with being imperfect. Yeah. That was a moment of strength I see.
Yeah. And I guess from that point on, or maybe there no doubt there are sort of further steps along the way, but I mean, you've been able to build a new life for yourself and your family, and as you say, it's kind of grown, and you kind of set up your own business, and that's sort of ticking along. And I guess, often we'll kind of look at these people, and on the outside, everyone looks happy and successful and rah-rah-rah, but you don't necessarily know the story that's kind of led them to get to that point.
Yeah, and even more importantly, how are they really? There's I could say the Facebook version of how life is, what we put out there to people, and which is similar to how we speak when we're out there with people, and people say, how you doing, how you're dealing with life, really good, but we don't really know what's going on the inside unless people are willing to be vulnerable and let that out. And then there's no opportunity to help and support if we don't know. Yeah. There's no invitation there if we're not honest with what's going on. Yeah. And there's bound to be some of that happening now. Bound to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like it's that honesty, and I mean, I think firstly it's being honest with yourself in essence, and acknowledging that things aren't right, and then being comfortable or prepared to basically put yourself out there and say to someone else that you're not doing okay. And that takes a lot, and often people will get pushed until they can't go any further, and there's in some respects you just have kind of this release, or someone just comes to you and their act basically is what breaks that wall down, and is able to review. But it's pretty potent stuff. So I guess in terms of at this time, current situation, and I guess reflecting on your experiences that have kind of brought you here today, what sort of advice would you kind of give to people at this time who I guess are struggling with things and perhaps feeling like they're overwhelmed?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because at some level, what I went through and what we're going through now are completely different as far as the circumstances and the situation.
Yeah.
However, the thing that's in common is we're human beings. We have particular ways of thinking, particular ways of viewing ourselves and our life. And I would say probably, gosh, there's so many things that I think could help, and it's hard to sort of where to start, where to finish. But I think the most important thing that on a level of just thinking and dealing with like how the day looks is to keep bringing ourselves back to reality, like being grounded in reality, dealing with what's actually going on versus what we think is going on, or what we feel is going on, or what the media might say. And a classic example of that, I was talking with a good friend of mine yesterday. We're in lockdown. So, I mean, the word lockdown could have us feel like we're locked inside, we're chained down, we've been stopped in every way that's important to us, our life stopped. But the reality of it is, if we look at the criteria of lockdown and put aside the word and what that might mean, there's been a lot of tough stuff we've had to deal with, but there were still plenty of opportunities, I guess, within that range of parameters to live from, that have helped us and could have helped us, if we're willing to move from the thought of what's going on to, hang on, look out the window, the sun's out, the sky is getting clearer, the water's getting clearer, we can still go outside and exercise and basic stuff. So I think a base thing is always to be dealing with the situation from what's really going on. And look, I've got a wild imagination, always have done, all my school reports said that, and I often have to say to myself, hang on a minute, what's actually going on outside of my head, not what's going on inside my head. Oh, wow, okay. So right now I'm sitting down talking to a computer. That's it. Anything else is like fantasy in my head. And, to be honest, I like being in the fantasy in my head. Sometimes it's fun, but if it's going to control me and stop me and actually have me feel down or stop me taking the actions that I know are going to be good for me, then I've got to really go, hang on a second, is that the storyteller in my head or is that from reality? So constantly just stopping every now and then, especially if you feel negative or down or low energy or irritated or anything that's not what you'd like to experience, then just stopping for a moment and going, hang on, what's actually going on? Like if someone videoed this, what would they see rather than what I think's going on? And that really helps to, I guess, simplify things and give you something to deal with in a practical sense. Knowing, much like with the weather, that winter doesn't last forever, neither does summer, neither will this. Like everything, the only thing that really is guaranteed is change, that something's going to change, everything's going to change.
Yeah.
Which to me takes away the anxiety of the moment, which is, I want it to be this way, but it's that way.
Yeah.
And my understanding of anxiety and anything in that sort of realm is a resistance to what's going on right now, or maybe not even that, maybe the resistance to what we think is going on. So being able to accept that even if things are absolute crap right now, it won't be forever.
Yeah.
And if they're really great right now, well, equally, it won't be like that forever either.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So I don't know where the camera's gone. Sorry about that.
I can still see you.
Oh, there we go. Good. I'll just turn that off. The other thing was to really be willing to trust the people around you, because quite often there's a saying which is you can't see your own head because your eyes are in your head, right?
Yeah.
And likewise, we often can't see like our own life, and being willing to trust the people that you care about to guide you, or to have someone, whether it's a mentor or a coach or anything, or a friend or family, be willing to allow them to look in and say, hey, look, can we help? Here's what I think you should do. Maybe trying this out. Those things I think are good. And just remembering that it's very easy to feel alone in these situations. Lockdown. I feel alone just saying it,
Yeah.
But we're not alone, because we're all human beings, whether we're from New Zealand or Italy or the States or anywhere else in the world. We are fundamentally all the same, and being able to just connect with people and keep in communication with people, I think, is a very important thing.
Yeah. And I guess the beauty of technology these days is, despite those physical constraints, we're still able to connect with people in a situation like this or many other sort of social media and such like platforms, which is really, which, to be fair, were we in 1918 when the Spanish flu hit, we wouldn't have had that sort of capacity. So it definitely helps to keep those lines of communication open, which is really good.
There is one other thing that's just popped into my mind, because like looking at the practical sense, I mean, we're all smart people. We're all clever enough to figure out probably the practical side of things, like, okay, so lowered income, we're going to need to reduce our expenses. I mean, that basic stuff, we just got to trust ourselves to do what we know we need to do. But the emotional thing, I mean, when I look back, and this is what started us on this conversation, was remembering from when I went from having my own business, and at the time it felt like I was earning really good money. I had a great lifestyle, and the view I had of myself and money and everything else was, it's all good, it's great, it's fantastic, there's nothing wrong. And then and also the natural male provider, you know, was being satisfied. And when my wife died, Rachel died, and the business stopped instantly, and there was the income coming in from the work we'd already done, so that went okay for a while. But then there was no income and still the bills, and going from not only from trying to deal with the physical side of it, but mostly the mental, emotional side of it, going from a provider to a beneficiary. It altered the way that I viewed myself, from someone who's able to provide, who's someone who's like financially screwed. I'm now a beneficiary. And in my view at the time, if you're a beneficiary, you're a bludger, you're using the government, and and your life is really controlled by that headspace. And it was really difficult. To give you an example, when I would go out socially and meet people I didn't know at a bar or something, and they'd say, "What do you do for a living?" I'd lie. I would never say I'm a single parent on the benefit with 3 kids, because the view I had of that was terrible, and it was really mentally constraining. So being able to understand that if you're going through financial troubles at the moment, if things aren't looking good financially, that not to be caught up in whatever that may represent for you, for yourself. And the fact that I went from what seemed like plenty of money to 7 days worth a week and 5 days worth of money and 1 adult and 3 children, when I got to a point where I accepted that, okay, this is just where I am and I've got to deal with it, everything started to change. And because I've been put in that situation, I learned to live on that budget. I learned to live with that money. I learned to shift my focus from struggling beneficiary who's a bottom dweller, whatever my rude views of that particular thing was at the time, to, okay, what's more important, and being able to find ways of making it through by spending less and managing money better, and going from needing to buy things to feel satisfied to spending 4 hours at the beach with the kids building sandcastles and looking for unusual shells and rolling around on the long grass laughing. And one of the things that really helped for me to accept that money doesn't have to be the biggest focus and that we will make it through, is at the end of the weekends, I would say to the kids, we'd have one day where we could go out and do something that was a little treat, and it might have been takeaways or it might have been a movie or something, and saying to them at the end of the week, what was your favorite moment? They never said the takeaways or the movie. They always said when we tickled you to the point where we thought you were going to wet your pants, or when we made that sandcastle and you put that last bit of wood on, the whole thing fell over and you looked like you were going to cry because your sandcastle got busted,
Yeah.
So in times of financial adversity, there's always the practical sense of what to do. Okay, there's less coming in, we've got to spend less.
Yeah.
But the mental, emotional state, if that can be dealt with, then it seems to make the practical stuff go better as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow.
And it takes something. It's not easy.
No,
it takes a willingness.
Yeah. And I mean, we identify, I guess, so much with our work and such like, and it's often one of the first questions we ask someone when we've been introduced, what do you do? And so there's that whole identity around it. And suddenly when that's on, it's like there's potentially a hole there. You actually realize I didn't really need that identity at all. And I can still live a perfectly happy life without that. As you've shown, and as your kids kind of indicated with their memories. So that's really beautiful. Cool. Hey, wow. Listen, thank you so much, Zane, for, I guess, sharing your story, not only with me, but those people who are listening out there. And I do hope that people can take something away from your experience and maybe apply it in their own lives to help them through their struggles at this time. I know you've sort of helped me a lot, and I'd like to think that I'll maybe help you in some way. And at the end of the day, I guess it is really about being there for each other through the struggles, and hopefully putting your hand up, but maybe being able to pick up on people's vibes when perhaps they're not so inclined, and offering that hand, which hopefully does get accepted.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you. And you have helped me a lot. And, you know, I guess it's something to end the talk on is, you know, even just that, knowing that you and I have contributed to each other and helped each other out is something that anybody can get something out of. When you reach out and connect with anybody else and allow people to connect to you, enough people do that, we'll make it through everything.